Street Fair, Book 2 of the Fairfolk Chronicles, written by Jeffrey Cook and Catherine Perkins, narrated by Fairy Princess Lolly. Chapter 16, Beastly and Sacred. After his role in their escape from the illusion, Jude was only too happy to return to Megan's pocket for a nap. With all the extra walking and discovering that they hadn't made any progress after all, Megan's legs felt like lead, and more than anything, she just wanted a nap herself. Lonnie looked only a little better off, and the Count was spending far more time resting on Kasha's shoulder than flying. Only the two full fairies looked unaffected. Megan tried one of her anti-fatigue songs, which seemed to help progress a little, but not nearly as much as she'd have liked. Much as I don't want another White alive and moving, or less dead and moving, I kind of hope we don't have another fight on our hands, she said, as they approached the last of the tombs marked on their map. Speak for yourself, Kasha grumbled. After that hassle, I'm ready to kick someone's ass and pretend they're Robin. As they neared the door to the structure, Jude again jumped out of Megan's pocket, reaching full form along with his brother by the time his back paws hit the ground in front of the tomb. After checking to make sure the doors didn't have protective runes or other wards against fairy magic, Kasha and Justin went to work prying the door open. This one came open more readily than the earlier doors they'd had to pry open had. As soon as it was open far enough, Kasha drew her sword and gestured to the leopards. She and Maxwell, followed by Justin and Jude, started forward. "Wait!" Lonnie called, but too late. The doors swung shut again, slamming closed much faster than they'd opened. Justin and Jude darted backwards, though Justin tumbled to the ground in the process, ending up outside, while Kasha and Maxwell were trapped inside the tomb. Moments after the door closed, multiple figures seemed to melt out of the light tree cover nearby, having been nearly invisible a moment before. An unearthly scream heralded a falcon leading the way, rushing at Lonnie, who dove to the ground to avoid its talons. A monstrous hound followed. At first, it rushed Justin, still on the ground, but veered away as the knight managed to draw the Clive Solish, shying away from the flaming blade. The two beasts, each with eyes the same glowing green as the earlier Whites, were followed by their apparent master. He was the biggest of the Whites yet, wearing only light armor, his skin covered in twisting tattoos, a couple of them glowing faintly green. The big figure drew a claymore from over his back, swinging down hard at Justin, who barely managed to get his sword up in time for a parry. Sparks flew from the Clive Solish on impact. Prevented from standing, Justin scrambled back as best he could, keeping his sword up and on the defensive, with the White following close after. The doors to the tomb shook with Kasha's obvious efforts to escape. Every time they did, one of the runes on the White's skin glowed brighter, and Megan guessed that it was some magic that allowed him to shut the door and keep it closed against the Satyris's powers, since they hadn't found any enchantment on the door itself. "He's using magic and a sword. That's not fair," she called to the others. "We noticed. Can we discuss fair later?" Lonnie called back, backing away from the advancing hound. As it was about to lunge at her, Jude barreled into its side, unable to knock it down, but at least throwing it off enough that Lonnie was able to avoid being trapped. The dog turned and snapped at the leopard, who darted back, taking a few scratches from the graze with the undead hound's teeth, but avoiding anything worse from the bite. After diving at Lonnie, the falcon quickly engaged Aisling and the Count, the two birds wheeling and darting about in the sky, with Aisling having to hold on tight during the evasive maneuvers. Amidst the attacks, a few black feathers flew, floating down to the ground after each close call. Focusing purely on defense, with the advantage of the magical sword, Justin was managing to stay alive, but he wasn't able to get up or get in any attacks of his own. He was running out of room to keep sliding back. The White sword, Megan guessed, had some kind of enchantment of its own, given that it had hit the flaming sword repeatedly without breaking. Considering that and the glowing runes, she started into a counterspell song, the one Aisling had run her through the most. She was 3 notes in, almost sure she was seeing the glowing tattoos fade slightly, before she remembered her earlier use of the song, of her throat seizing up. Megan fell silent preemptively. Favor to Jude, diving at the monster hound's hindquarters, throwing it off balance as it tried to lunge. Because of her interference, the snapping jaws missed, and it took a claw rake across the face, though that didn't slow it down at all. It whirled, the motion flinging Lonnie away, sending her tumbling in the grass. Jude got in another slash with his claws, cutting deep into the dead flesh, but it didn't show any signs of slowing down the hound. The falcon clipped the Count, who floundered, starting to tumble, and then managed to pull back up. As the falcon dove to follow up, Aisling leapt off the Count's back, managing to grab onto one of the falcon's wings, changing its trajectory enough to make it miss. The larger bird rose again, with the pixie clinging on tenaciously, trying to buy her mount time to recover. "Megan, some help!" Lonnie yelled, backing away from the snapping jaws again, as she and Jude alternately tried to keep the hound off balance. Megan started towards Lonnie, then paused, looking to Justin, trying to figure out whom to help and how. Everyone was in trouble, and the quickest spells to come to mind were either less than relevant or less than singable. Against a tree, fighting as best he could just to fend off attacks from the larger warrior, who was far quicker with the huge blade than he should have been. Still, Justin was managing to keep himself alive and armed despite the heavy blows. He started to stand, bracing himself against the tree, but ducked back down under a furious swing, hitting the ground as the claymore flashed over his head. Megan guessed he had hoped to bait his opponent, and maybe get the other sword stuck in the tree to create an opening. If so, that effort failed, as the claymore cut right through the tree in a single blow. Megan remembered one of the songs from the book, a simple one in basic C major. For practical purposes, anyway, since old-style music probably wasn't written with modern musical theory in mind. Megan tried to focus. The point was that there were no sharps, no chance at all to sabotage herself. She remembered it had worked, but other songs had worked quicker, and had easier lyrics. With so little practice, she couldn't remember the strange Gaelic words. Something, la something. She tried humming, but there wasn't enough power to it. The falcon finally shook Aisling off, sending the pixie tumbling, flapping her tattered wings furiously to slow her fall. The Count managed to get under her, aiming his dive in time to let Aisling grab on and swing back into riding position. Megan had to help now. She knew whom and she knew how, if this worked. She started to sing the most familiar words that fit the melody and hoped that Aisling would know the tune at least. Thistle, lavender, mulberry, and mauve. It was just a selection of pastel shades of pink and purple, but Megan sang it with passion. Indeed, Aisling seemed to recognize it, and she and the Count flew towards Megan as fast as they could as the song built up, with the others continuing their desperate battles, all showing the signs of their fatigue. With the close calls getting closer, Megan forced herself to focus on her timing. The falcon saw his targets retreating toward the formerly confused girl and flew after them, picking up speed. As the Count got close enough, Megan caught the pair, holding on as she sang louder. Just as the falcon's talons closed within inches of her face, a powerful blast of wind blasted it backwards, sending the bird spiraling towards the hound. When it hit the other beast in the flank, accustomed to the other pair attacking every time it focused, the hound whirled and snapped, clipping the falcon before it could dart away. Aisling, the door! I'll keep the bird off you. Megan, I told you! House windows are one thing. That thing is way too heavy for one pixie. Just counteract his closing magic or whatever. Kasha will do the rest. The figure with the claymore noticed the surge of bardic magic, buying Justin a moment as the wight considered Megan. Before he could rush her, Justin went on the offensive. The wight fended off the attack cleanly, clearly more than a match in pure skill for the young warrior, but worried enough about the Clive Solish that he couldn't ignore the attacks to go stop Megan from grounding the falcon. While the Count was likewise kept on the ground amidst the magical winds, Aisling was able to drop to the ground and dart towards the door, casting her best opening spells. The heavy door crashed open a few moments later, and an enraged Kasha barreled out of the tomb with Maxwell at her side. Lonnie was given a badly needed respite, and the two cats teamed up on the hound, letting Lonnie crawl away to catch her breath and check the severity of the cuts she'd taken so far. Kasha trusted the cats to handle themselves and moved to help Justin, slashing down furiously at the wight. While his skill might have been sufficient to ward off Justin, Kasha was a different matter, and several cuts hit home. The undead shrugged most off until she managed to lock swords with him, tying up his defense. A moment later, Justin took advantage, taking the wight's sword arm off at the elbow. A thrust followed, and the flaming sword buried itself in the wight's chest. The green eyes went out, then were replaced by white flames. With another swing, Kasha took his head off. As soon as he fell, both the falcon and the hound dropped, flesh rotting and crumbling away until both were nothing but skeletons, their ambition apparently tied to their masters. Megan moved towards Lonnie, and Justin staggered over as well. Finally, they collapsed beside her. All three sat together, trying to recover their breath as Lonnie continued to check her injuries. The Count slowly hopped over, and the cats lay down nearby. Kasha came to check on them, showing a special concern for Jude's numerous deep cuts from the fight. Aisling set a tiny hand on the Count's wing in tired silence. Finally, there was a breathless voice. "Thistle, lavender, mulberry, and mauve?" Lanny asked, an eyebrow raised. "Have time to check the liner notes in the middle of combat. We don't even have the songbook with us. Anyway, it worked, so those are the words now." "I can't believe a folk song worked," Lonnie said. Aisling shrugged. "It's nothing new. Okay, sure. Hers were kind of overly clean by traditional standards, but still." Megan was just recovering enough to head back for the wight to collect his cloak, as they had the others, and perhaps get a better look at his sword, when she saw a movement. At first, thinking the wight was somehow getting back up, she screamed, then recognized the figure crouched next to the body, removing the wight's cloak. "Robin," Kasha spat, sounding like it was a curse word. "Don't worry, Cass, just leaving," he responded with a smirk, tucking the cloak over his arm. "What do you even want it for?" Megan ventured, holding up a hand to try to keep Kasha from doing anything they'd regret. "Well, that's a complex question. Why is it wanted? Because apparently, to wield sacred power, you need the sacred around, for a very, very special definition of sacred. But really, as to why I'm getting it? Just for laughs." "Sacred? What?" Megan tried, confused. "Nuh-uh, that's all the clues you get," Robin said. "Goodbye." Kasha lunged, but by the time she reached him, Robin had either disappeared in a flash of tiny, sparkly lights, or appeared to well enough that the spectacle let him slip away.
Hello friends, this is Gun for Hammerhands. Thank you for checking out Fairy Princess Lolly's channel. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe button. Safe travels!